श्रीगणेशाय नमः। श्रीसरस्वत्यै नमः। श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्। सर्व अन्तर्यश्च बहिर्विधूततिमिरं ज्योतिर्मयं शाश्वतं स्थानं प्राप्य विराजते विनमताम् अज्ञानमुन्मूलयन्। पश्यन् विश्वमपीदमुल्लसति यो विश्वस्य पारे परः तस्मै श्रीरमणाय लोकगुरवे शोकस्य हन्त्रे नमः। Let us do the Mangalacharana of this text. सत्प्रत्ययाः किन्नु विहाय सन्तम् हृद्येष चिन्तारहितो हृदाख्यः कथं स्मरामस्तममेयमेकम् तस्य स्मृतिस्तत्र दृढैव निष्ठा। मृत्युञ्जयं मृत्युभयाश्रितानाम् अहं मतिर्मृत्युमुपैति पूर्वम् अथ स्वभावादमृतेषु तेषु कथं पुनर्मृत्युधियोऽवकाशः। Let us chant the verses 27 and 28. रूपोद्भवो रूपततिप्रतिष्ठो रूपाशनो धूतगृहीतरूपः स्वयं विरूपः स्वविचारकाले धावत्यहङ्कारपिशाच एषः। भावोऽहमः सर्वमिदं विभाति लयोऽहमो नैव विभाति किञ्चित् तस्मादहं रूपमिदं समस्तं तन्मार्गणं सर्वजयाय मार्गः। We saw how the ahankara, the ego, our individual self that identifies with everything, that which is the product of avidya, maya, deceives us, makes us believe that it has gone away, and how one should inquire into its root, its origin, and that is the way to win over the entire world. Tanmarganam sarvajayaya margaha. We have to be careful while dealing with ego because it hides, it covers itself, it presents itself in different forms. It takes up different forms, it identifies with different forms, it gives up different forms, and it keeps changing. But in reality, it has none of its existence. It is not existing at all. Exhausting at all in the sense from absolute standpoint, from the standpoint of Brahmajnana, Brahman, it is not there. Having said this, now Raman Maharshi Ji is explaining. Let us see the verse 29. सत्यास्थितिर्नाहमुदेति यत्र तच्चोदयस्थानगवेषणेन विना न नश्येत् यदि तन्न नश्येत् स्वात्मैक्यरूपा कथमस्तु निष्ठा स्वात्मैक्यरूपा कथमस्तु निष्ठा Raman Maharshi is saying yatra where ahamam na udeti aham na udeti aham ahankar na udeti does not rise satya sthiti that is the true nature of being, that is the satya swarupa, the true state. What does it mean? You will see later when we see in detail the description. Tacha, and that too udayasthana gaveshanena without udayasthana gaveshanena, inquiring into gaveshanena, inquiry, without inquiring into its root, origin, place of emergence. Na nashyet, will not go away. Yadi tat na nashyet, if it does not perish, if it does not go away, स्वात्मैक्य रूपानिष्ठा कथमस्तु. Swatma Aikya, Swa Atma Aikya, Jiva Brahma Aikya, oneness between Brahman and Jiva, knowing the oneness of one's own true nature and entire creation. How can it be there? What Raman Maharshi is saying is that state is the true state of being where ahankara, ego does not rise, it does not emerge. That again will not perish. That again will not perish without the search for its place of emergence, its place of origin. If that does not perish, can there be being in the form of oneness with one's self? What Raman Maharshi is saying here in this verse is that is the true state of being where ego does not rise. That is the true state of being where ego does not rise. That means where ego does not exist. Ego has ceased to be. When its birthplace it's sought, inquired into, the ego dissolves, it goes away. If it does not go away, if it does not perish, then how can there be the abidance in one's own true nature? What happens is that egoless state, that state where ahankara is not there, is always there. It is always present. But it gets covered by the presence of ahankara. There is no formation of ahankara, there is no ahankara present in state of supreme being, meaning when one is absorbed in one's own true nature. During that state, ego will not rise. But that state is always present even when the ego is there. As we had seen earlier, ahankara, ego is always trying to pacify, calm itself, is searching for happiness. And once that ahankara starts inquiring into its own true nature, its origin, the ahankara dissolves, it goes away. तच्चोदयस्थान गवेषणेन विना tat na nashyet. That ahankara will not go away without inquiring into its origin. And only when we inquire into its origin, its source, the ahankara perishes, it goes away. If ahankara does not go away by such inquiry, there is no possibility for one to absorb oneself in one's own true nature. That is the true state of being where ahankara also has gone away, it has perished. This is what it is. Ahankara is looking for fulfillment, but it is looking for fulfillment elsewhere. When it starts inquiring into its own root, it searches there, it will go away, it will perish. That state is not some peace of mind which will get destroyed, which goes away. If that is the state, it is not the true state of being. It is the egoless state, the state where ahankara is not present, the nature of oneness with the self, and it is a permanent state, whereas other states where we feel quietened, peaceful, those are impermanent, temporary. Having explained this, Raman Maharshi is now saying, explaining, कूपे यथा गाढजले तथान्तः निमज्य बुद्ध्या शितया नितान्तं प्राणं च वाचं च नियम्य चिन्वन् विन्दे निजाहं कृतिमूलरूपम्. A very beautiful example and explanation. Raman Maharshi is saying, Yatha, just as, Gadha Jale Kupe, in a well of deep water, in a very deep well inside the water. Tatha, in the same way, Pranancha Vachancha, Prana, Pancha Prana, vital airs, Vachamcha, Vachamcha Vani, speech, Niyamya, having controlled, Nitantam Shitaya, Shitaya, sharp, extremely sharp, Buddhya, by intellect, with intellect, Antaha Nimajja, having dived, having inquired into one's own true nature, one's own self, Chinvan, Chinvan, Chinvan is inquiring. What should inquiring? Nijahang kritimula rupam, to the root of one's own ahankara ego. Vindet, one gets. What does one get? Raman Maharshi is saying, as one dives inside well in a deep water to retrieve something or some object, in the same way, having controlled one's own prana and vani, vak, with extremely sharp intellect, with single pointedness of mind, having dived inside, having dived inside as in inquired into. Inquiring, one gets to the root of one's ego. How do we get to the root of one's ego? Maunena majjan kupe yatha gadha jale nitantaha. The example is a jewel or some precious thing has fallen inside a well. Now, when such thing has fallen inside well, what one needs to do is, one needs to go deep inside that water, go down all the way and retrieve that thing. In the same way, our own true nature has been lost in this deep, dark well of prapancha, samsara, this entire creation, ajnana. How should we retrieve as in how should we know, how should we identify with our own true nature, how should we know? Raman Maharshi ji is saying, having controlled one's breath, prana, and speech, vani, one should inquire into one's own true nature with single pointedness of mind and sharp intellect. When it is done, one will reach the root of one's own ahankara, individual self, identity. Understand? If somebody wishes to dive deep inside a pool or well, he should have mastered the art of diving. He should be well qualified, eligible. No lay person can do that thing, and even if he tries, it will do him more harm than good. You need to control, you need to know how to control your breath, how you need to control your internal abdominal pressure, etc. Because as you go dive deeper, the water pressure increases. Even though the well is not that deep, it is always better to be well prepared. So not any common person or anyone or everyone can do that thing. You have to be well prepared, you have to be well qualified. In the same way, the self, our own true nature, is there at the root of this well. Which well? Our ahankara. And for that, we have to go deeper, dive inside. Then how do we prepare for that? Raman Maharshi ji has given example. Raman Maharshi ji has explained the path, the way how to achieve it. He says, having controlled one's breath, prana, that is pranayama. Controlling of breath, prana, is associated with quietening of mind. One can easily quiet and pacify one's mind by pranayama. It is called prana vikshana, observing one's own pranas. And when one does that, what happens is the pace of mind slows down. It is not corroborated, it is assisted with other practices such as nama japa, etc. Invoking, repeating name of Ishvara, any name, associating that name with that particular form, vigraha, or whatever that name is trying to describe or explain. When it is done, automatically the mind, rather than thinking of Vishaya, external objects, objects of pleasure, it starts thinking of Ishvara. In this way, when mind has been trained to think upon the things which are different than Vishayas, objects of pleasure, such mind can be put into inquiry into one's ego, ahankara. So, with such sharpened intellect, now, sharpened intellect as in that which is capable of discriminating has studied Shastra. First two parts. First two parts, controlling speech, not to speak. What does it mean by controlling speech? Do not exhaust yourself. Do not go on speaking unnecessarily. Yuktahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu, as it is said in Bhagavad Gita. Your activity should be controlled. Your pranayama, your breath should be in control. Your mind should be in your control. When it is done, your intellect is capable of inquiring. And that intellect needs to be sharp. What do we mean by sharp? Do we need to grind it on a stone and make it sharpen? Yes. What is that stone? That stone is pramana. Pramana as in Vedas, etc. Means of knowledge. Repeatedly studying those texts, one should sharpen one's intellect, as in one should learn how to discriminate between anatma and atma, non-self and self. One should understand the logic behind that has been explained. Because if we go on inquiring just like that, usually the questions that arise, the doubts that are created in our mind cannot be solved by ourselves, for which we need to have studied these texts which have been given by different Vedantic teachers. They have explained how to inquire, how one should study, how one should identify the problem, and how one should react to it. Why is it so? Why it is not this way? Why it is this way? And when such intellect starts inquiring all the doubts that are created for its own existence by our ahankara, ego. We had seen in the last class that ego will try to disguise itself. Identifying him and inquiring into its own true nature, own true self is possible only when our intellect is sharp, able to inquire. And with such an intellect, when one inquires, when one is able to identify one's own faults, failures, and come up with solutions, then he can reach the bottom of that well, the root of ahankara. One will get to the root of one's ego, that is one's own true nature. Then, what one should do when one is doing nididhyasana, contemplating, Raman Maharshi is explaining. मौनेन मज्जन्मनसा स्वमूलचर्चैव सत्यात्मविचारणं स्यात् एषोऽहमेतन्न मम स्वरूपम् इति प्रमा सत्यविचारणाङ्गम्. Verse 31. Maunen majjan. Maunena by silence. Majjan, diving, going in. Manasa by mind. Swamula charcha. Inquiry into one's own root, true nature. Eva, that alone. Satya Atma Vicharanam. True self-inquiry. Real inquiry. Syat. Is or will be. Eshaha aham. This I, ahankara. Etanna mama swarupam. This ahankara is not my own true nature. Iti prama. This knowledge, satya vicharanangam, is a part of true inquiry. Raman Maharshi is saying, diving in silence with sharpened intellect by mind, Inquiring about one's own true nature, one's own true self, is the self-inquiry. This I am, this is not my nature. These thoughts are a limb or a part of true inquiry. What is it? Simple. Mauna. Mauna is silence. But it is not just not speaking with someone. The mauna refers to not entertaining to any of our organs of knowledge and organs of action. Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. It is not like mauna, as in not speaking and then saying everything by writing on some piece of paper or pointing towards things. That is not mauna. Mauna is mananat mauni. Thinking of one's own true nature is real mauna, for which you have to control all your organs of action and organs of knowledge. That's why not speaking is part of it. When it is said not speaking, not interacting with the external world, controlling all our interactions with external world is real mauna. With such mauna, with silence of mind, manasa, manasa by mind. Now that external inquiries or external interactions have been controlled, mind is available to us. And with that mind which is available to us, which is ready to listen to us, samoola charcha. Samoola charcha, not gossiping, but reflective mind. Inquiring into, reflecting into one's own true nature. Charcha, inquiry, discussion. Charcha literally means discussion, but inquiry into one's own root is true self-inquiry, is real self-inquiry. This is my true nature, this is not my true nature. Such knowledge alone is the true inquiry. Now, what is part of that inquiry? Now, what does it mean is, with mind, as it was pointed out, indicated in earlier verse, inquiring and discriminating what is my own true nature and what is not. That involves Panchakosha Viveka, Avasthatraya Viveka, Shariratraya Viveka, etc. This body is not me. This gross body is not me. This subtle body is not me. The causal body is not me. Annamaya Kosha is not me, etc. Distinguishing between self and non-self, my own true nature and what I am and what I am not. But one has to be careful that these thoughts should not take us towards what we are trying to give up. That's why Samoola Charcha, not Moola Charcha. Anyways, what Raman Maharshi ji has pointed out here is, there is an inherent, not exactly problem, but an inherent obstacle in this inquiry which is created by inquirer himself. It is not part of the method. So when one is inquiring into what is self, what is non-self, what is one's own true nature, what is not one's own true nature, one starts inquiring and says, okay, this gross body is not me. Why this is gross body is not me? He starts thinking. While thinking, because he is thinking of gross body, he suddenly realizes, oh no, my legs are aching. That mosquito which bit me, uh, is creating too much irritation. No, 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 no. I must not inquire into, I must not think into of this gross body. So he starts to avoid thinking of gross body. So when one starts inquiring in this way, the problem that arises is rather than not thinking of gross body, subtle body, causal body, etc., he starts thinking more of gross body, subtle body, and causal body, etc., which should be avoided. Once that has been given up, no further repetition of that thought. It is like observing. That's why one is active inquiry, actively discriminating, actively giving up, and other one is passively inquiring. Just stay there, just be there, and whatever the thought arises, analyze that thought. If it is anatma, give that up. It is atma, accept it as one's own true nature. With this form of inquiry in this way, when one inquires into one's own true nature, one realizes that I am Brahman, I am who I am. Iti pramasatya vicharanangam. This is my own true nature. This is not my own true nature. This knowledge alone is the true inquiry. Then what happens when such inquiry is conducted? Raman Maharshi is explaining. गवेषणात् प्राप्य हृदन्तरं तत् पते दहन्ता परिभूग्नशीर्षा अथाहमन्यत् स्फुरति प्रकृष्टं नाहं कृतिस्तत् परमेव पूर्णम्. गवेषणात्, गवेषणात् by inquiry, tat hridantaram prapya, having reached that which is within one's heart. Ahanta, ahanta, ahankara, this ahankara, ego, identity, individual identification with anatma. Paribhugna shirsha, paribhugna shirsha, paribhugna shirsha, the one whose head has split, broken, got destroyed. Patet, false, perishes. Atha, therefore, then, anyat aham, this another I. Prakrushtam, prakrushtam, spashta, clear, mukhya, prakrushta, mukhya, main. Spurati, shines forth. Tat nahankriti, and that is not ahankara, but param purnam eva. It is one's own true nature, param, supreme, highest, purnam, full, complete, eva. That is Brahman, one's own true nature, Atma. Raman Maharshi is explaining, saying, having reached within one's own heart by the search, the notion, or having reached one's own true nature, or having reached that which is within one's heart by inquiry, or having gained one's own true nature by inquiry, what is going to happen is this ahankara will fall like someone whose head has been split or gotten destroyed. It falls as in it dies. But when ahankara, this ahankara, ego goes away, another aham will rise. It will shine forth. But understand that is not ahankara, that is not ahankruti, nahankruti. It is not ego, it is not ahankara, but it is paripurna sat. It is supreme being, your own true nature. In another text, Raman Maharshiji's own Upadeshasara, Raman Maharshiji says, अहमिनाशभाज्यहमहन्तया स्फुरतिरुत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत्. Ahaminashabhaji. There he explains the same thing. When this ahankara nashabhaji gets destroyed, ahamtaya, in one's own true, one's own heart, one's own antahkarana. Now, antahkarana has lost its present, but for explanation, in one's own heart, ahamtaya, as aham, I, this sat, the existence principle, the pure consciousness principle, will rise. Paramapurna, Spurati Rutswayam Paramapurna Sat. That alone, that Parameva Purnam will shine forth, will rise as Aham, I. What is being explained here? Let us see. Raman Maharshi is saying that when one starts inquiring into the nature of ego, ahankara, what happens is one will reach the state or that chaitanya in one's own heart. What does it mean by reaching that in one's own heart, in one's own antahkarana itself, where the thoughts are taking place? This ahankara, the ego, as we had seen earlier, is capable of hiding itself in different forms and easy. So, when one starts inquiring, what happens is, when we inquire, who am I, who is this ahankara, who is this ego, or other things, where one is inquiring into whether this gross body is me, whether it is subtle body is me, whether I am this pancha prana, etc. All those thoughts will lead one deeper into one's own antahkarana mind. And one such thing happens, all the unnecessary parts or unnecessary thinking of mind will go away. It is like scraping dust or soot that gets accumulated over a vessel by repeatedly putting it on fire. That black soot, it will go away. It will, if you start scraping it, like that, all the unnecessary parts of mind start going away. And when all those go away because of inquiry, in that mind itself, where the mind was, in that mind itself, where the mind was, that Sat, our own true nature, will be revealed to us. And when we reach that state, that level, what is going to happen is this ahankara, this fellow, this ego, it will fall like someone whose head has been chopped off, cut off. Why? Because ego has been hanging on to all those thoughts which have been taken away. Ego will not exist. Ego cannot be without any thought of object Vishaya. Ego will identify itself as a Brahman, but when it is okay, and let us see, let us understand. We had seen this, but let us go through it again. Let us say, I am so peaceful. I am peaceful. That peaceful is the object of experience for this I, Ahankara. I am hungry. Hunger is the experience for Ahankara. Two contrasting experiences. Now, when one, so in conclusion, what the point here is, Ahankara always holds on to different object thoughts. When those object thoughts have been cleared by inquiry into one's own true nature by mind, there is nothing to hang on to for this Ahankara. And therefore, it falls, it goes away like someone whose head has been chopped off. Because body cannot survive without the brain, it falls off. And when this Ahankara falls off, that which prompted Ahankara to identify with objects as I, as existence, that true Aham will shine forth, which is one's own true nature. Now, how to distinguish and identify? It is difficult to explain. One needs to experience that by oneself, by oneself. But understand this: when one thinks of it in that way, when one inquires, what is going to happen is, aham, it will just be I without object thought. During that experience, you may not even say I am. During that state, at that moment, even there will not be even I am. But when we come back to Vyuthana Dasha, we will say, okay, that I, that is my own true nature. When we are in that state, we cannot say this is my own true nature because we are what we are. But when we come back and start experiencing this world, we say, no, the world that I am experiencing is the superimposition by my mind, but I know what my own true nature is. A subtle difference, but very important. There is a very beautiful Bengali bhajan or poem, you can say, which was one of the favorites of Swami Vivekanand ji. I think it is his own composition. It is Nahi Surjo Nahi Jyoti, Nahi Shashanko Sundar. It talks about Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the Atma Anubhava. There he says, Dhire Dhire Chayadala Mahalaya Praveshila. Slowly, slowly, this entire creation, Prapancha, will get dissolved in that Maya, Maya, in that Mahat, and that also will get dissolved into Atma Swarupa. And when such happens, what remains is Aham Srote Nirantara. That Nirantara Aham, that I. It's not I am or I see, I know, nothing. It will be just be I. Aham. That's what Raman Maharshi says here. Atha anyat aham spurati prakrushtam. That is not ahankara, but it is self which is shining forth as its own true nature, which is paripurna, purnam. Ahankara is apurna. Ahankara is not full, but this is full. Having explained this, Raman Maharshi is now going to say that all of us are bound by our duties in this world. Do those duties, kartavya, continue even after realization, even after knowing one's own true nature? If the bondage is not there, do duties need to be performed? Do they continue or not? Raman Maharshi is going to explain us, but let us see that in the next class. ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ